And hi, everybody. Welcome to Sister to Sister. I'm Trish Carr with Women's Prosperity Network. And every week we have a conversation on Sister to Sister with one of my amazing sisters of color and talking about racism and how it shows up in everyday life and what it's like to live as a person of color. So I'm really excited to have with me today Khady Koroma-Thiombiano. And Khady has a very interesting background, and I can't wait for you to hear it. But first of all, she's a nurse, and we all are so, I think during this last year, people have really come to understand what you do for people, Khady. So firstly, let me say thank you for everything you do.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome.
And putting yourself out there on the front line every single day. And,
Mm-hmm.
and you have been a nurse leader for over 20 years, right?
Yes, 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 I
Yeah.
have.
And, especially now, we can certainly understand
Mm-hmm.
why so many nurses experience burnout and stress. But
Mm-hmm.
it's been going on for a very long time, and you've been seeing it firsthand.
Yes,
And you want to change that for them, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
For us to become more productive, just not with our own family, but also, the profession itself. We're out there taking care of lives, and we want to make a big difference. So burnout is not a good thing. When you burn out, you're not going to be effective by the bedside. You might mistreat your patients, and that's not accepted. You know,
Yeah.
and so at this point, I believe that nurses should nurse themselves. So that's where I come in.
Awesome. And in that, you're the CEO of Faith Heartworks, and you are really a mindset coach for nurses, men and women, right? Because you always think of nurses as being female, but it's men and women. And you make a big difference for people to achieve the results in managing that stress and burnout. So thank you for that. I know that you speak on topics of finding your voice and time management and self-awareness, and you're a real visionary for the future. So thank you for everything you're doing in the
Oh, you're
world.
much welcome there. You're much
Yeah,
welcome.
nurses need you more than ever.
Yes.
Nurses need you more than ever. And you have when we were talking about your background, it was really interesting that you were born here in the US, but when you were 7 years old, you moved to Sierra Leone.
Yes.
And
Yes.
talk to me a little bit about your experience there and what that was like living in Sierra Leone.
Yeah. So when I was young, I was always excited. My parents said, "Oh, we from Africa," and I was like, "Africa," was always imagining, the great things and just looking forward to go there. So my dad finished his doctorate degree here in George Washington University. My mom was totally homesick. She hated being here in Maryland in the DC area because of the cold. She was asthmatic. She was having all these things. She just wanted to go home. So they bundled myself and two of my siblings. At that time, my mom only had three of us at that time, and we went to Sierra Leone. So I went there, and the funny thing, let me say, when I went there, it was like, okay, now I see all these Black people, right? Because I was living right here in DC, and the school that I went to, Washington DC, elementary school, it was predominantly white
Right.
kid myself, and now here I am because my mom was the type of person, she really did not take us out, but we're always home. So when I went to Sierra Leone, now here I was like, oh my God, all these Black people. And one day I asked my parents, I said, um, is there a Black God?
It's a Black Jesus. Yes, there is.
And everybody bust out laughing, because now it was different. So here was, at that time, the accent, being, just coming from here, I sounded different.
Yeah.
They used to refer to me like, oh, the foreigner at that time. Oh, here comes the foreigner. But I adapted and went to elementary school, continued my elementary school and high school. And from high school, I came back to the United States. And I was hungry to come back now. I was tired of sick. I said, I need to come back to my country where I was born. I need to come to Washington, D.C. So I came back when I was about 21, 22.
Yeah, and that's when you got your education. You became a nurse, right? Was then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And becoming a nurse, I didn't really want to become a nurse, because I had an experience. I had my favorite aunt, which was my mom's older sister, and I learned in 1982. At a time, she died on duty. She suffered a brain aneurysm. So I never really wanted to become a nurse because I said, oh my God, the job killed her.
Right.
Because she died. She was a nurse leader herself, but because of stress, family life, and her own life, she suffered an aneurysm. So I ran away from the career for a long time, but it seemed like God was just pushing me to go back in there. So eventually I gave up.
Well, I gave in, and that's what you're doing now. So, and you're making a difference. I think that you were put here for some purpose, and that purpose was to make a difference for those women and those men, and they're on the front line and they needed you. So here you are. And when we were talking about being on the show, and I was saying, the whole purpose of the show is so that we can share experiences. So because, like I say, people can argue, or they do argue, whether white privilege exists, or whether discrimination exists, or whether systemic racism exists. All these concepts can be debated, but you cannot debate with someone's experience. And when you and I first were talking, you were saying, I don't know if I've really experienced any discrimination or because of the color of my skin. And then some stuff started coming up for you, right?
Yes. Because like I said, I remember you were mentioning that, and you were saying you're gonna, you started the sister thing, talking about racism. And I was like, okay, I don't think I'll be part of that. I never thought about anything. And when you called me and all of a sudden something said, yes, you have. Okay, you want me to remind you again? And I always say maybe it's the Holy Spirit then, and then everything stopped popping. So I didn't really experience any like type of racism in my own personal life, because where I live in Maryland, Prince George's County, and this area is predominantly African Americans, Black, that live in this area. So I felt safe. I hear about it. I hear other people going through the experiences, but personally, I never experienced myself. But I can say in my profession, I did witness that.
Yeah, and we talked about that. You were saying how the higher up you move in the hierarchy of your profession, the more narrow it became in terms of race. I found that to be true in my profession as well.
Yes. I pretty much, when I graduated, I just pretty much become a medical surgical nurse. They call it med surg nurse, and more oncology. And they have this, when you grow higher, they have what they call intensive care nurse, the ICU nurse. And at some point I was thinking about it, but then I would hear my colleagues like, oh my God, they're not going to accept you there. And I'm like, why not? I said, well, a lot of people have tried to go in that department, we, the African Americans, Black, and they don't really accept us. And even when we get there, they based on our, they feel like we're not competent enough. That's what they would say, because I was never an IC nurse. Because of hearing those stories, I never really tried to apply to be in those areas. And when you get there, they will frustrate you out. They will accept you, but they will find every reason to just, they will smile at you, make it seem like it's okay. And these are people that you expect, you trusted them. And then it would get to that point, the frustration will come in, like your eyes need to be dotted, your T needs to be crossed. And it's okay. I mean, it's okay because now we're dealing with lives, but the support then goes down.
Yeah.
Now they're setting you up for failure. And I'm like, no, I don't think I want to be part of that. And it was all based on the color of their skin. And most nurses that I know who were African Americans, they eventually have to resign and go somewhere else.
Yeah, when they move up to that position. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I remember you saying to me, and I hear this all the time. I have to work so much harder because of the color of my skin. And that's really where white privilege comes in. Nobody's saying you don't work hard if you're a white person
Right.
or not of color.
Yeah.
It just means that you don't have the additional
Exactly.
stress. And
Mhm.
you have to, even when you have accomplished, you have to continuously prove yourself. I feel the same way as a woman, and add on woman plus color, it's that much more challenging. So
Yeah.
yeah, so you've seen it in your profession.
Yes, yes,
For
yes,
sure.
yes, yes. And I also had an experience that was about 19 years ago.
When
No,
your
18
son
years
was
ago.
born, right?
Yeah, my son was born. I decided to be, because I did mostly my clinical nurses as a travel nurse. So at some point I had an assignment and I would travel to one of the facility not too far from me. So when I got there, yes, I noticed when I went in there, I was pretty much the only Black nurse that came on as an agency nurse. I mean, I went through the report, I went through the medication narcotics count, and I was just about to start my assignment when I got an attention of one of the managers that came up and she asked me, are you Khadijatu Koroma? I said, yes, I am. I would like to speak to you. And I was like, okay. So she took me to this room and she sat down. She said, well, I feel like, I just got a report from the nurses, your colleagues. They feel like you not capable or something's going on with you. You have to give me your keys back and go home. And I'm like, what? I would then, and I couldn't believe what was unfolding at that moment. I was like, go home. Why? What did I do wrong? Um, they're not comfortable for you being working with them. I'm like, I'm still trying to understand what she's saying. Like, did I do something wrong? And well, would you like to take a drug test?
What?
And I'm like, drug test? Yes, they think maybe, you might be under the influence. So if you like to take drug tests. At this time, I was like, this is really happening now. So I went ahead and just gave her keys and I went downstairs. They took me down and did the drug test. And the result, it came negative, but it was I felt so angry, so bad. I don't know what to do. And I couldn't even say, okay, I'm going to sue somebody because I'm an outsider, I'm not the facility. So that was like one of the worst things that ever happened to me.
And this was a new group of other people that you were working with, so
Yeah,
they didn't
yeah.
really
As
didn't
an
know
agency
you.
nurse, yeah, as an agency nurse, they can send you anywhere. They can
Yeah.
say, oh, they have an opening somewhere. Do you like to go work the morning shift on an 8-hour shift? Yes. So this was a whole different setting I was not familiar with.
Were you the
But I
only
thought about it,
were you the only one of color in the group?
yes, at that time. But I made excuses. I said maybe they misidentified me with somebody else. But when I look back, that's what it was. There wasn't, maybe my name was different. They wasn't expecting me, but I mean, it was just terrible. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can't imagine that didn't hurt. And thank you for sharing that.
Yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I just prayed to God to heal my heart. I was like, oh my God, no, I can't, and it's just a story now. So,
Well, and it just comes from ignorance and stereotypes. I mean,
mhm.
I was watching Emmanuel Acho does a show on YouTube called Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man.
Yeah.
And he recently hosted the final episode of The Bachelor, which I don't normally watch, but I watched it because he was hosting it and there had been a racial controversy. Did you hear about it?
No, 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 no,
Yeah, there
no.
was a racial controversy that happened after they wrapped filming and all that stuff. So he had to address it. And he said, these things that happen, you know, when people do what they do, when those other nurses did what they did,
Mhm.
it plays out as ignorance, but
Absolutely.
ignorance plays out as racism. It
Mhm.
plays out as insensitivity, racial insensitivity, but
Mhm.
it plays out as racism. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are racist,
No, it doesn't. No, but it plays out that way.
but it's they were socialized white. They
Mhm.
were socialized to see a threat. I was speaking to one of my sisters on the show the other day, and
Mhm.
she's a white woman married to a black man.
Mhm.
And she was saying that even she, after all these years, married 39 years to this
Can
man
you
and having
imagine?
experience, she said even she feels those things that we feel, you know, should I cross the street? There's a black man behind me, right?
Yeah.
And she's enlightened and knows and lives it. So it's really ingrained. It's ingrained that we can't even see it. So us having this conversation
Right.
helps us to see it,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
helps
And
us to see it.
you can see it, and I think, yeah, the mentality should change, actually, because I mean it does a lot. The morale, self-esteem, it does a lot to a person, because we all want flesh. At the end of the day, I mean, I'm at the bedside. We're going back to when you're done, when life ends,
Right,
what's left? It's just that body.
right.
And I see that, and we see that over and over again, especially during this pandemic time. I mean, I dealt with a lot of dead bodies. Just, I'm like, oh my God, it's gone.
Sure.
And here you are, you saw them when they were young, they were professors, they were, they had all their careers in life, but at the end of the day, we all won. We go back to dust.
Exactly. All
Yeah,
of us. And we
all of
all
us.
bleed red.
I mean, I know we all want to be different, but we should all be able to be willing to accept one another and love one another as sisters and brothers.
Yes.
Yes.
Amen to that, my
Yeah.
friend. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Well,
Really.
you're welcome.
Thank you for opening your heart and for going back to revisit those things that, you know, weren't, that you had put away.
Yes.
I don't take lightly your willingness to do that, and I so appreciate you. And I appreciate everyone who's watching. And I ask you to please share this video. The more that we can have conversation about what racism looks like, even though you are not racist, what it looks like, and we can learn from it, the more we can be the change that we want to be in the world. So
Yes. And I wanted just to say this opportunity before we close, just to say thank you so much for what you sisters do with women's prosperity. Just putting us under your wings and lifting us up. We just love you. I love you guys so much. So thank you so much. And it's an honor just to be on the show today with you.
oh gosh, thank you. It's my honor and my purpose
Okay, thank you.
to uplift and do the best that I can for other women. Khady Koroma-Thiombiano, thank you so much for being here. Thank you all for watching. I look forward to seeing you again on another episode of Sister to Sister. Take care, everybody. And thank you for sharing. And thank you for keeping the conversation going.
You're welcome. Thank you.